Hi, this is Red again, and having a pretty good week actually. In addition to my out-of-town guests, my friends from Chicago came last weekend, left on Monday, and my friends from California arrived on Wednesday, and then this afternoon on Friday, and then of course Kim arrives tomorrow, so even better. But I also had a pretty good day, pretty good week rather, in the library working on my short stories. I've now completed three drafts of three different stories, or drafts of three different stories. I'd say the first one went went more or less how I envisioned it, but after review, realized I needed to extend the story to make it more compelling, make it more emotionally robust. And the story that I originally wrote was kind of what I envisioned, but then realized I needed to extend it. So I was able to do that. So that was an interesting experience. My second story, Invisible, was really unfolded exactly as I imagined it in my mind when I conceived of it. So it's very, very close. The version I have now, the draft that I have, is very, very close to what I had envisioned when I began writing it, or when I started to think about that particular story. But this third story I finished, Peacemaker, is one that changed pretty dramatically from the way I had thought that it was going to go and how I planned for it to go. As I was writing, I realized, I really wasn't working with characters. I was working with mouthpieces to have an intellectual discussion. And, that's never really a very, maybe other writers can make that work, but I don't feel like that's my strength, and I'm not particularly interested in reading a thinly veiled intellectual discussion. And why not just have the intellectual discussion between a couple of different people? And as this morphed and became more character driven, became more about the specific people that are in the story, while it's still trying to keep some of that universality that I think makes good fiction relatable. I traveled quite a distance from kind of where I expected the story to be and where I expected the story to go, into kind of where I landed at the end of the day, or at the end of the week here this week. And that's been an interesting process for me. And so each of these three stories has kind of, changed, or has been a different experience for me. And it's been really interesting to sort of see that I can have a variety of experiences. Each story I'm writing has its own kind of unique path, or at least so far. And I'll be curious as I, continue to write these stories, if that, continues to be the case, that, sometimes there'll be significant change in the story as I go through the first draft, or, sometimes it won't be. And I'll be curious to see how often and how frequently that happens. I'm an analyst after all at heart. And so I like to understand how things work. And, as I think about my own process and my own creative process, I've got a lot of interest in that. And I'm curious. It's a process of discovery for me as well, how I work, and how my stories come to fruition. So anyway, I'll keep you posted on that. But I thought it was really interesting to kind of see those three different ways that I ended up with a complete story, and we'll kind of see how things go going forward.